on the Craftsmen Online podcast because we always talk about the future, and that's where I want to be. As we welcome back our friend, worshipful brother Nicholas Broadway, editor of the Square magazine. Welcome back to the Craftsmen Online podcast, brother.
Hello, Michael. Great to be back again.
We're going to get into it on this episode. We've talked about AI. We've talked about, machine learning, the future, how technology incorporates with Freemasonry. We're also going to get into your new lodge that you've created and some of the online learning that you're putting together, your very first virtual Masonic Research Academy. But I wanted to start our conversation with a story, and this is a true story that took place last year. We were doing a Master Mason's degree, and I'm sure in lodge you get the whole, everybody turn off your cell phones or put them on silent, put all your devices away so there's no distraction. It's the worst possible time, right? During the degree, during the obligation, and that solemn moment when there's a distraction. So we've got everything quiet. We're sitting there. The worshipful master comes down. He goes up to the altar. There's the brother who's ready to take that a very important obligation. And I'm trying to remember the exact phrase that he said, because I'm sure it's different than with the ritual here in the States than how it's done in the UK or in Europe. But basically something to the extent of, furthermore, I solemnly and sincerely, and that is what triggered his Apple Watch, because Siri heard sincerely and thought we were calling her name out. And she said, "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking me." He paused, and the rest of us were just ready to just bust out laughing because there's technology interrupting things. Later on, when he finished the obligation, I sat there thinking, I was like, I got to ask Nicholas about this. Like, will Siri ever be able to understand the obligations of Freemasonry?
I don't think an AI will ever understand the moral understandings. I think it will certainly understand the allegory, because even now you can ask it questions about symbols and allegory within Freemasonry, and you can ask for the output to give it the output in forms of like personal development. So, and it's very good. So it understands it better than we understand the interpretations of the allegory, but it will never understand the morally the way we would understand it. It is lines of code on tin. You can't get away from that. So I don't think it will understand from a moral point of view, but it certainly understands a lot more than we'll ever understand from the interpretation of the allegories, because we won't have enough time in our lives to read all the ancient texts to try to understand it. And I also found, from my own work experience, some of the books that, even Masonic books that are written 100, 150 years ago, the old English is very difficult to follow and to read. And trying to reinterpret that in a modern language becomes very difficult. And I found that taking Mackay's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry and trying to research it. If you get the volumes, you go and buy the volumes, yeah, and you've got them on your shelf, and you want to research something. Just reading it through and trying to understand is impossible, very difficult. Well, I've got a digital version of it, and I had to break it up into smaller sections, but I've loaded it into Google's Notebook LM, which is an AI tool. And I can now ask it any question about any aspect, any symbol, anything related to those volumes, and it will come back fully interpreted. So it understands it, the interpretation, but from a moral point of view, the way we as humans understand, no, I don't think it ever will do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in that moment, and to what you're talking about, when I sat there and the funny thing is, after Siri interrupted, he quickly took the watch off, stuffed it in his pocket, and finished the rest of the degree for that master. But it got me thinking, and I was like, AI will be able, as you said, AI will be able to do the research end of it. It will be able to tell you what this symbol means, where it dates back to in history or the Bible or whatever. But the esoteric elements of it, unless we plug that in for AI to scrape that data, because that's really all it can do, but it's never going to be able to understand the experience or any emotion or human feeling that comes with that. because it's not that sophisticated yet.
And I don't think it ever will really understand, because does a dog understand ritual? If a dog could read it, would it understand it? Does it have a faith? One argument might be that to understand Freemasonry, you have to have a faith. Even people who claim to be atheists, they have a belief in something. They have a feeling about something. So Freemasons who from those jurisdictions that are atheists, I'm sure they have a certain belief. And I don't think an AI will ever get to that stage. It is still lines of code on hardware.
So here's the other conversation, and I told you we had this discussion at work recently on AI governance and how federal contractors, we have a very challenging role. Everybody knows that people are using products like ChatGPT or the Google products. That's what I like to use. And we have people putting data inside of that. And once you put something into an AI system, there's no way to get that out. It's in there forever.
Correct.
What I've been really fascinated with is in my use of AI, asking questions. Sometimes I use it for prepping for guests that come on the podcast and they have subjects that I don't know that much about, and it's a great research tool. When it comes to the quote unquote secrets of Freemasonry, are there things that we should not be putting into AI?
I think that horse has already bolted. We've only got to look at books like Masonry Dissected, that was written in 1730. And that book is freely available on the internet. It includes all the secrets, the words, the explanations, and they've been around for 300 years. I don't think, see, the point about the secrets for me is I was given the secrets when I was obligated, and I obligated myself that I wouldn't divulge them. And that's, for me, that's my conscience. I'm not going to tell people those words, even though they could see them in a book, read them in the book. I'm not going to be the one who tells them. And so it's very personal to me. I know those words are available. They're available everywhere. So if somebody wants to know the words, they'll know the words, but they'll never understand why it's a secret unless they're obligated.
And is this a discussion? I want to kind of pivot over to the Ex Libris Academy and some of the work that you're doing. Is this a discussion that you're having with your lodge brothers as you're sitting here trying to create the first virtual Masonic lodge?
Well, that's going to be the challenge. How do we keep it secure? And for virtual meetings, that's absolutely right. But that's one of 10 projects. So creating a virtual lodge is one of 10 projects. And I would also say it's probably the biggest challenge. But at this stage, what we're asking is, let's start a dialogue on how we can do it. Because I think we want to get there in the end, but we first of all got to discuss how do we even want to start that dialogue. There's lots of things to think about. How do we know somebody is taking an obligation on a holy book if they're not in the room? So we've got to figure out from a technological point of view, how do we assume that? I also think is how much do we want to replicate in a virtual space, which actually takes place in a in-person performance, and yet still maintain that egregore, that feeling that you have. You know yourself when you're in the room and there's a group of men performing a ceremony, there is this sense of egregore, this energy that's in the room. It's impossible to describe, but you know it's there when you're there. How do we replicate that? And that's part of the challenge. And that's why in our lodge, we have members who are technical people who live and die, work all day in AI. We also have other members who are not technical, but very good ritualists, and they're going to be like the test bed. If we show them we're going to work in this particular way, they are there to act as the first customer for the system to say, well, actually, I don't get it, I don't feel it, it's not working for me. But the VR space, it is the second project on our list. It is probably one of the most challenging projects, but it is only one of 10.
Let's get to the Ex Libris Lodge number 3765, another Grand Lodge of England. This is what I find so fascinating. Your story, I love Masonic history. This is a lodge that was founded back in 1916 with a prestigious legacy as the Hall Stone Lodge. And now you are a lodge that's in the future. As we mentioned in the open, you're also the master and membership officer for this lodge. What are those other 9 projects that you're trying to put together and move forward this year?
Well, let's start with a little bit about the history first, and I can talk about the project. So, yes, the lodge was founded in 1916. Ex Libris is the Latin for book plate. Yes, so these are plates that people would have printed. They would stick them to the inside cover of a book, and they'd write their name in it. So it's part of their library. Yes, and they're very collectible. They're beautiful designs, and they're very collectible. And it's formed by people in the City of London who were in the print industry. So they were printing books or printing stationery. And it was, if you like, a chamber of commerce. If you were in the print industry in the city, you belonged to Ex Libris Lodge, because that's where the movers and shakers were. I mean, people who, one member was the owner of Waterloo's, who were the printer for the Bank of England notes. And the brother who designed the Ex Libris book plate, because it has his own design, worked for the post office, the engraving plates to produce stamps. So these people were, as you say, movers and shakers in that era. So and they were sort of innovative. Printing was innovative, in 1916. So what happened over the years? The lodge fell on hard times, I guess. And what they did was they relaxed the admission, so people were joining who were not from the print industry. It was just become a general purpose lodge. And it wanted to hand its warrant back. Now, I don't know whether you have this in concept in New York, but in London or in England, when a lodge gets to a point where there's not enough members, it hands the warrant back to the Grand Master, and then the lodge ceased to be. And it can never come back again. And it was about this time last year that they wanted to hand their warrant in. We went to the Metropolitan Grand Lodge, the London Lodge, and explained what we wanted to do. We wanted to take over an existing warrant. It's a quicker process to take a lodge that's already in existence and repurpose it than to start with a new one. And we started that negotiations, and we were introduced, 6 of us were introduced to the existing members of Ex Libris. They'd already made their mind up they were going to hand the warrant in. We were introduced that we're going to take it over. A takeover sounds quite hostile. You think of a hostile takeover, but this basically, the guys there, they'd given up. They're going to hand it in, but we were going to reuse it. And I was installed as master in last April. So we haven't been running for a whole year yet. But in that year, with half a year of operating since April this year, we've initiated 4 candidates into the lodge, and we've grown the membership from what it was before we moved in, about half a dozen members. We will be about 30 members at this coming April meeting. So we've turned it around. So the first target or the first task was to secure the lodge's stability. Now, we're then looking at how we're going to do our research. A lot of our research has to be done outside the lodge environment, because there's certain Book of Constitution rules that you can't break, and we don't want to break those. We want to use the lodge as a test bed, so try things outside and then bring it in to the lodge and see if it works. So we set up a second entity, the Ex Libris Academy Limited. This is an English registered company, has a board of directors, and it will manage all the research projects. So the research is done in the academy, but we also have a lodge which allows us to put to use some of the research.
Okay.
The good thing here is, in the academy, because it's not a Masonic lodge, we're able to have people work with us who are not members of lodges recognised by United Grand Lodge of England. And in the few years that have been leading up to this, I've made a number of acquaintances with many Freemasons from around Europe and other parts of the world who are in what we loosely regard as liberal lodges. They're regular Freemasons, but then their Grand Lodges are not recognised by United Grand Lodge. So they can't participate in lodge meetings because they're not recognised. But they can participate in the academy because it's not a Masonic environment. Yes?
Yep, I got
also
you've kind of created a little lab there that you can work together
we're
on.
creating a lab is exactly what it is. And the other thing is the cost of joining the lodge is quite high because we have to pay Grand Lodge fees, we have to pay Metropolitan Grand Lodge fees, and we have to pay lodge on costs for the use of the hall. And so it's a lot of money. All the money that we get in, it goes out in costs. But the idea with the academy, there's going to be a much smaller charge to be a member of the academy. And to be a member of the academy, it allows you to receive the research results when they're published. And the money that we raise in the academy will be used to fund the research projects.
This timeline, where are you at now to where you are close to the finished product?
Oh, we're at the very beginning. We are at the very beginning of the process. So as I say, the lodge, we only took over in April this year. So we're just about a year, or just under a year in that process.
I have so many questions about this because this is a fascinating story. Like when you walked in to meet with the brothers that were kind of getting prepared to surrender their charter, so to speak, and you said, hey, we have this idea that we want to resurrect this. Like, what was their reaction? Were they excited to see that their lodge was going to be taken to a new level?
Well, there were probably only 3 or 4 people at that point that left in the lodge that were active. The rest had given up. Of those, one has stayed, one is still a member, and he was initiated into the lodge, and he's been a member of the lodge since 1970s. So for him, it's his mother lodge. He doesn't want to give it up because he's part of it. And he's a really nice chap. He's going to be listening to this, so I've got to say he's a real nice chap. He is a really nice chap. Other members, this wasn't what they were interested in, and they've taken honorary membership. Basically, what it means is they've resigned their subscribing membership. They remain a member of the lodge, but on an honorary basis. That means they don't pay any money for their membership, and they don't get involved with it. And most of them just wanted to be quite happy for us to come in, do our thing. It's not what they're interested in. They've got other fields to plough, and they will go and do their own thing. So it's very, very amicable. Everyone's really happy because we've managed to save a Hallstone lodge, which in itself is good, and we've managed to save a lodge that's 100 years old. It's got history, which is good.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And we've managed to attract new members into that lodge. So it's a win for everybody.
It's interesting. This is like turning out to be the year of birth. I know of so many lodges that are now under dispensation, or brothers are coming together and saying, hey, we want to do a lodge that does this. They have an affinity or a specific purpose that they want this lodge to do. It's just not like, hey, we want to plant a flag and start, a new lodge. It's like, no, we want to do the lodge that does this type of work. What were the conversations like with your Grand Lodge and the Metropolitan Lodge and the steps that went through to line this up?
So I wasn't involved with them at the meeting with Metropolitan Grand Lodge, but we put my another brother was at that meeting. He put the proposal to Metropolitan Grand Lodge, the members that he was having the conversation with, and their view was, this is really fascinating. I think I understand what you're doing. And it turns out this particular person works in one of the banks in the City of London working on AI dealer desks. So he did know what we were talking about. And his view was, don't explain it too much. Go ahead and do it. And then let's see what happens. So it's very much, we're very much an entity that's sitting on the edge of the main pool. Here we are, we're a research lodge, we're sitting on the edge. We're going to go away and break things, disrupt things, change things, and then bring it back and show what we've done in our time. So we've got a little bit of a free hand at the moment. I don't think too many people know about us, which is good. It gives us a chance to get established. We do follow the sort of Masonic tradition, ask for forgiveness rather than ask for permission.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
But to be fair, as I said, everything that's done in the lodge is done by the Book of Constitutions. There's nothing that we're doing that is not part of the Book of Constitutions. The research is where all the interesting stuff takes place.
This is such a fascinating, because every month I get an email with the kind of the summons for your meetings, and it's like, if you can come join us, and I'm like, I'd love to hop on my private plane and fly out there and be with you for dinner, because I imagine the conversations that you have at this lodge, and just the fact when you said we had 30 members that have already affiliated and come and joined. Here's why, because this is new, this is exciting, there's purpose. I'm sure we're not hearing conversations about, leaky roofs or sidewalks that need to be fixed and plumbing issues in the bathroom.
No, it's very different. We only meet 4 times a year, and when we set out to run our lodge meetings, they're lodge events. It's not a meeting; it's an event. We were meeting on a Friday evening, which made travelling home at night a bit of a challenge. We've now moved our meetings to Saturday mornings, and that's now been approved. And our next meeting will be our first Saturday morning meeting. And that's completely changed everything, because now people are coming from further afield to London. We're getting a lot of overseas visitors who'll come over for the weekend, and they'll fly in on a Friday, stay Friday night and Saturday night, and then go back on Sunday. But the conversations are all about the technology. And when I go and meet other brothers on my general Masonic travels, the conversations often come back to what we're doing at Libra, and people are just fascinated that there is a group of people, Freemasons, who are actually looking at this and how are we going to make this work. So we don't talk about the food, we're not worried about, as you say, leaky roofs or any of that. This is all about how's AI going to work, how's the VR going to work, how's blockchain how we're going to be doing that. And the conversation is really deep and intense.
Let's get to that, because I'm sure there's brothers that are like, oh, I want to know what they're talking about. How do they do this? What are some of these conversations, and what is the vision that you have? I think when brothers hear a virtual lodge, they think, oh, like I can just log in, like in this meeting, I can go to a Zoom meeting or a Microsoft Teams meeting, and there I'll be, or it's a Google Hangout or a chat or something. But you're actually talking about, we'll have what are they, avatars of ourselves, and we'll be in a virtual lodge that with all of the 4D and
yes. So the idea is that it'll be based on a VR headset. So members will have VR headsets. Accessing into the meeting, for example, I foresee that will be based on blockchain technology. So your Grand Lodge certificate will be a token on a blockchain. So you will need your passcode to access in. It will be just the same security that the entertainment industry is going to be employing when they do live VR experiences. They've got to have a ticketing system that is secure. They can't have a leaky system, otherwise they're not going to make money.
So no evites.
No evites. No. If you want to invite, then because the point is, you've got to make sure that the people who are coming in are recognized. So there's that whole challenge. But I think the whole challenge of Grand Lodge certificates, so one of the projects is specifically looking at how do we digitize Grand Lodge certificates on a blockchain, so that when a member goes to a meeting, he's basically going to it's been shown that he says, this is my certificate. So he gives a QR code, and that pops up on an iPad, and he's got a 6-digit code he's got to put in to prove who he is. And then you go, yep, this is who he says he is. Yes, just as you would take a Grand Lodge certificate to a secretary and say, here I am, and here's my Grand Lodge certificate. Yes?
Right. And the reason why I'm laughing about this is because I know in certain jurisdictions we still have paper dues cards. The idea even a plastic dues card doesn't exist. It's paper.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Well, ours, we don't have dues cards. We just pay into a bank, and then if we want to go visit another lodge, and we're not known, we might be asked to send a clearance letter. So we have to, the lodge that we're visiting secretary would contact our lodge treasurer and get an email saying, yes, this person has paid. I mean, yeah, it's having a dues card would probably be a really great idea. we're still further back, and even the application to join Freemasonry, it's still a paper form that has to be written.
Yeah, in your handwriting.
So we are going from the 18th century to the 21st century in one leap. So yes, so looking at the VR is the most interesting of the topics, but it's not the only topic. But it's going to be the most challenging. But there are companies in Europe, VR companies, who have already created VR spaces in temples. I know a company in Portugal, they created a VR space, and when you go in, you're going into King Solomon's temple.
Yeah,
and you walk into it and you sit down and you are in King Solomon's temple.
I want to be there so bad. That sounds so cool. So cool.
And if you've ever been used a VR headset, you'll know that within minutes of it wearing it, you forget everything in your real surrounding and you are in that space. It takes a few minutes to trick the brain with the sound and the vibration and the visual, because as you turn your head, you're seeing different parts of the room. It's not like we are now having a camera to camera conversation. This is, as you move around, you see the changing thing.
So next level. Will you actually be having your meetings in a lodge room, or will brothers be logging on remotely from home or wherever?
Well, the end game, my end vision would be is that we would be sitting at home, we would put ourselves in a quiet room, and we would put our VR headsets on, and then we would do the login process, and we'd go to lodge meetings. So your lodge meeting would start in 3 hours' time. Well, I'd be ready, and I'd have got my access code ready, and I would be sitting waiting, and I'd join your meeting.
Wow.
And I think that's how it will be. And it sounds crazy now, and I can probably imagine people listening to this podcast thinking, never going to happen. It's never going to happen. Well, you've only got to look at the youngsters, what they're doing, and they are the future. So one of the areas of interest, of course, is looking at how we can attract Gen Z into Freemasonry. And the Gen Z are the 12 to 27-year-olds. Yes, so that's the generation. Well, next year they'll make up 27% of the workforce, and by 2033 they'll be the largest generation in the workforce.
Wow.
So if we're not talking to them now,
right,
we're not going to be talking to them in 10 years' time.
Yeah. And I can already hear the voice from those that would oppose this and say, oh, well, it's in a lodge meeting if you're not in a lodge with your brothers. And as we've kind of joked, but oh, yes, because it's so important that we have to be in person to talk about cracks in the sidewalks or leaks in the roof, because the focus isn't going to be about that. I imagine where you're taking Ex Libris, and this is what makes it so fascinating, is minds are going to want to come together to do that thing that we talk about in our ritual, which is becoming those living stones. And the focus is going to be on the programs and the Masonic education that will be instilled in them. There still will be in-person events, I'm sure, dinners, special banquets, lodge functions that'll happen outside of a VR headset. But when you log in, this would be like take your favorite sports team, the best TV, your favorite TV show that you watch right now streaming, and a movie theater experience combined into one, wrapped around Freemasonry.
Also, don't forget what's happening in the rest of the world around us. I envisage, while we still have live sports venues and we still have restaurants that we go to, of course, in-person events will still take place. It wasn't that many years ago that we were all in lockdown and we weren't able to go to sports events. We weren't able to go to restaurants. In England and Europe, I don't know, it's big in America, but certainly outside, there's a lot of talk now about 15-minute cities. These 15-minute cities means that you live and work and do everything within 15 minutes of where you live. And if you want to go outside that 15 minutes, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you a lot of money. So unlike congestion charges, where we have at the moment, where you have to pay to go into a busy city, we have to pay. So if we want to drive into London, we have to pay a charge to drive into London.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. Now, it won't be long. What the government want is for us to pay a charge to leave the city that we're in. So we'll have to pay a charge to leave the city and then a charge to go into a city. Well, of course, they can control travel.
Right.
Well, so suddenly now, it's not a case of, you know, a meeting's going to cost you $25 for a meal. It's going to cost you $25 for the meal, maybe $50. It's going to cost you parking, but it's going to cost you congestion getting out of your an escape fee for leaving a 15-minute city, plus a congestion charge going to another city which you've got to pay. So with all our generation have experienced the freedom of the motor car, and no question about it, I generally think those times are going to change. I think the car is going to be a luxury, and being free to travel is going to change in the next 20 years.
Yeah, I could definitely see in major metropolitan areas living close to one, but still far enough away from it. It's not a reality for me. I want so badly to live in a place where I could just hop on a metro and get to where I need to go, but it's an unfortunate reality that I must have a vehicle, which means my wife must have a vehicle. And I'm like, why do we need two cars? Like all of these, they're more of a hassle than really what they're worth. And I wish I did live in a 15-minute city. And the way that you talk about it, yeah, we do need to find a way to address the younger generation, to engage with them. But I also just see, as far as being able to open up what we have, if, as you kind of talked about the pandemic, if there was one good thing that happened during the pandemic, was we all were able to kind of virtually travel to places. I know that I got to attend lodges that I never would get to virtually log into, because one, that wasn't a reality, and two, they were on the other side of the country and I would never be able to fly out there on a Thursday night for a meeting. But this is giving me that opportunity that if you so desperately want to connect with other esoteric or like-minded brothers on particular topics, well, here's your opportunity to do this with anybody around the world.
Absolutely. And I think the emphasis will shift on a sliding scale from being a social event to be a learning platform.
Yeah.
At the moment, most people go to a lodge and they go there for the camaraderie and they go there for the meal and they go there for the drinks, and it's a social event. I think that will start to diminish to some extent with the next generation, and they will be looking at it for a learning opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of our research projects, is to look at online learning. How can we start to provide good quality online learning? And as an individual, from the Square magazine point of view, we've already started looking at that, and we're offering courses now, online courses. It's a start. They're clearly a long way to go, but the point here is that if we can get a few people writing really good quality courses that can work for hundreds of Freemasons, well, we're providing this online mentoring that is not possible in every lodge. Every lodge doesn't have an expert mentor that can provide that. So I would see definitely online LOIs, Lodge of Improvements, Lodge of Instructions, Lodge of Learnings will start to see that a lot more development of that. But it then shifts the proposition. See, if you're chatting to a potential candidate, now you might be talking about all the social side of it, and great to meet all these people, and that's what you're selling, the camaraderie. But already I'm starting to shift that away from that to Freemasonry as a learning platform. You learn the symbols, you learn the allegories, you learn what happens within the lodge, but the important part then is you learn how to transfer that from within the lodge to the outside world, how you become a better person by literally taking those lessons and put them into practice. We talk about it all the time, but there's no one actually teaching us how to do that.
Yeah. And this is what I love, is this is very purpose driven. You're actually using technology to do the thing that it's supposed to do, kind of bringing it back to the earlier part of the conversation, which is we're not using technology to ask questions to get answers to things that we don't have the time to research on our own. That's kind of where AI and machine learning helps us. We're not using it to compile huge amounts of data and give us an answer. What we're using the technology for is to connect, to enrich the human experience. And that's what I love about this. And that's why I'm such a big supporter personally of this. And I can't wait until all of these developments and all these initiatives that you have open up so that I can be a part of them, because I want, so as I said in the beginning, I so desperately want to be there with you in the future together.
Yes.
And I know, brother, that you're going to get there. And that's what's so exciting about this, is every time I talk to you, you're like, well, we're doing this and we're rolling out this. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, we have, bearing in mind that the lodge only meets 4 times a year and we're in our first year, that's 4 days.
Yeah. Changing the world in 4 days over the year.
Well, that's how many days we've been meeting. Yeah. So, but there are, in our 10 topics that we have, there are a few that are not, there's a couple here that are not IT related, but still form part of IT, the technology is going to assist. Now, I'll give you one, for example, which I know is, it can be very controversial, but it's something I want to research. That is the adaptation of one-day classes. Now, when I talk about a one-day class to craftsmen, and they don't really comprehend what it means, that a group of people do a first, second, and third in one day. But I think we've just lost connection.
I can still see you. I got you. We're good.
Are you back?
Yep.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, we're back again. So we're going to research the adoption of one-day classes, because at the moment, we're restricted by time, that we can only meet at a certain time, and we've got to travel. But why can't we look at how we can bring in 20 guys in one day and do the 1, 2, 3? Now, I do know that in certain states of America, that is practiced in person. People come in, and I know it's very controversial, but having done a little bit of research, and I've not done a great deal on it, but I've done a little bit of research on it, there seems to be an opinion that there's no definitive figures that show that somebody who joined in a one-on-one ceremony or somebody who joined in a one-day class, that their retention figures are greater or less than the other. Somebody who came in a one-day class with a group is just as likely to retain his membership as somebody who came on a one-to-one. So we're going to look at that, and I think that is something that needs to be examined. Now, that, of course, is not necessarily a technology-led project. It's more of a Masonic and Masonic-led project. But then we would say, how does technology help us achieve that?
Right.
So it will. That's what we're looking at. And then how can we use the technology to make that happen?
Yeah, I think you're going to make, that's an easy one. You could use technology to kind of shape the experience, but then also be there on the back end to support that Masonic education, which is going to be And it's to the point you made. Yeah, I think if you can get a quality one day to all degrees, quality degrees in
Yes,
one day, that's
yeah,
better than 3 spread out that aren't that great. So I'm a
exactly.
fan of it if it works.
Yes, and I think that's. But you've got to start that conversation. You've got to. People have got to, and there will be research on that. And there's lots of data that exists already that just needs bringing in and putting in a document, documenting and presenting in a way that an adult presentation that people can listen to and say, well, actually, it does sound that there could be a solution for that,
Mhm.
especially if you want to grow membership. And if growing membership is a criteria, that is definitely one way of trying that. So that's, for example, a non-technology project. The other, which is very much UGLE centric, um, in America you have a Blue Lodge, Craft Lodge, and then you have York Rite, and within the York Rite you have the Royal Arch within the York Rite. In England, it's a different story. We have Craft and we have Royal Arch Chapter, both run by United Grand Lodge of England. In England, this is it within England, and these are two separate entities. They're different operations, but they're the same, and the Grand Lodge is trying to bring this together. But of
Mm.
course, they're very different degrees and they operate very differently. So one of the projects that we are working on will be to bring a chapter along with us within the lodge. Now, the expression that we're using is to open in the fourth. So how do we open in the fourth? And we're going to be, we are in negotiations with a chapter that exists and to get them to change their meeting dates to suit our meeting dates, the Saturday. So we'll meet in the morning, the chapter meets in the afternoon. And we want to do the process where we can do a 1, 2, 3 in the morning and then a 4 in the afternoon. So,
Hmm.
and try and bring that seamlessly so that it's not a big step. I appreciate in some jurisdictions, craft is 3 degrees, and then you go and join the appendant bodies. In English Freemasonry, it's not quite like that. So this is a very English centric
Hmm.
issue. It doesn't necessarily translate. However, there are many appendant bodies in England that have got small appendant orders to those, and of course it could translate for that as well. Um, it's a without being a member of an English craft and an English chapter, it's difficult to understand, but they're run by the same group of people, generally the same people in both. It's just they're two separate organisations.
Yeah, I got
How
you.
how can we bring that together and make it a seamless 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah,
But
we're going to
that's
go
another
from
project that we're working on.
goes from a brother conversation to a companion conversation and bridging
Yes,
that.
yes, exactly,
So
exactly. And they will obviously, the idea is that will be in a VR space as well. Once we've mastered how we can open a craft lodge in a VR space, well, then opening a Holy Royal Arch chapter in a VR space it's just be a natural thing.
yeah, and it shouldn't be a problem. I'm sure there's our listener is a brother and is like, I want to be a part of this. You had me at Academy Research. How do I get involved? The website to get all of this information, we're going to have that in the notes for this episode. You can click on that link.
Yes.
But just kind of walk us through like what options are available for brothers that might have an interest in affiliating or being a part of the Academy and the lodge.
So there's, as I say, there's two entities. There's the lodge, and to be a member of the lodge, one would certainly have to be, if they're joining member, they would be joining from a Grand Lodge that's in recognition with United Grand Lodge of England. That's a stated factor. That can't be altered. And if we are, as a lodge, also attracting candidates for initiation. We're a lodge, though we're a research lodge, we're attracting candidates. And the candidates that we're attracting generally have an interest in IT. So they're either working or they've got a passion for IT. As it happens, the candidates that we are initiating are all IT-based people. And that's great because it's that interest for them. The Academy is more liberal, more open. So any brother any brother or sister, any Freemason, regardless of their Grand Lodge, can join the academy. And they can, to join the academy, you'll join it to either take part in research projects, and or you really want to start looking at the output of the research topics. I would hope that in a year's after 12 to 18 months of research, we start to have some papers that will be of interest, and that will be a time when we'll be like introducing these into various Grand Lodges around the world and say, do you want to have access to this research research papers? So anybody, it's really open to people who are currently working in the AI, the VR, the blockchain space, who are Freemasons, who can see how that technology can really help the future of Freemasonry, and who want to work as a team. As they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. And we think that we're going to go far in these groups of teams. So that's the offer.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to get away from papers and letters and just get to a 6-digit code to verify who I am. I think that's the whole thing with traveling and being able to go everywhere. We're told to do that,
Yes.
and throughout our degrees, whether it's in person or with the VR headset. Like I said, you're in the future, and I want to be there.
Yeah, well, that's great, and you will be.
Nice.
You will be. Looking forward to that day.
Worshipful Brother Nicholas Broadway, thank you so much for giving us some time before your dinner this evening. And I look forward to seeing you back on the Craftsmen Online podcast again this year.
Thank you very much. It's been always a pleasure.
Perfect. All right. That was good.
You like that? Was that okay?
That was very good. Yeah, you did great. You did really good.
Thank you.
Once we got talking about Ex Libris, that was really where the interest, like for me, I was like, oh my gosh, he's so close. And then when you said, yeah, we've only met like 4 times, I was like, yeah, that's a lot in 4 days. Wrap that around my head. I was like, I mean, I know that you're meeting on the side and you have a lot of other things going on, but
it's 4 days. It's literally 4 days. Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, you've dropped the gavel 4 times. That's